On the morning of Tuesday, November 11th, 2024, just after 10 a.m., the atmosphere at Birmingham Airport seemed ordinary. Flights landed, passengers collected luggage, and the flow of travelers continued without interruption. But among the routine movements of the arrivals hall, three separate stories of crime would soon collide in the public eye. Stories involving a mother who pulled her children into a criminal plot, a dealer whose carelessness revealed more than he intended, and a man who thought he could walk calmly through customs with a fortune in drugs. This is the story of their downfall and how their actions exposed the darker undercurrents flowing through Britain's airports. Welcome to UK Crime Documentaries. Let's get straight into the case. On the surface, Farzana Kauser, a 54-year-old woman from Bradford, lived the life of a typical mother and grandmother. To her community, she seemed like many others, raising her family, attending to household responsibilities, and presenting the image of an ordinary parent. But behind that outwardly quiet existence, she was carefully building and directing an international drug trafficking operation valued at millions. Investigators would later describe her as the linchpin of a sophisticated network, one that moved vast quantities of cocaine from Mexico to the United Kingdom. Kauser was far from acting alone. Evidence presented in court revealed that she was working with contacts overseas, including a figure referred to as Uncle in Pakistan, who played a role in arranging shipments and providing connections. This shadowy partnership helped her establish a system that on the surface looked like carefully timed family trips abroad, but in reality, it was the foundation of a large-scale criminal enterprise. Her leadership was both calculated and deeply personal. Unlike many organized crime figures who distanced themselves from direct family involvement, Kauser deliberately recruited her own children into the conspiracy. Some were barely out of their teenage years. Hamza Shafak, for example, was only 17 when the offenses took place. Still legally a minor when the smuggling was underway, his life trajectory was altered irreversibly by the decision to obey his mother's demands. His siblings, ranging from their late teens to early 30s, were all given roles to play. Her eldest son, Junaid Shafak, 33, took on a central role, helping coordinate travel and oversee operations. His position in the family made him a natural extension of his mother's authority. Alongside him was Mohammed Amir Shafak, 28, who acted as a courier, entrusted with handling luggage runs and taking part in the smuggling activity. Uzair Mohammed, 22, became part of the operation at an age when most young adults are just beginning careers or settling into adult life. His role as a courier exposed him to the full dangers of the conspiracy. Kauser's decision to draw in her daughter-in-law, Sarah Hussein, 27, widened the circle of devastation. Rather than being shielded from the criminal side of the family, Hussein was instead expected to take part in the broader plot. Safa Noor, just 19 at the time, was another one of the youngest members of the conspiracy. Drawn directly into her mother's plan, she acted as a courier within the network. Her role showed how even the youngest in the family were given responsibilities in carrying out the smuggling operation. Outside the immediate bloodline, Khalid Abdulkawi, 36, a trusted friend of the family, was also recruited. His willingness to join underscored the tight-knit but destructive nature of the group. This was not a loose arrangement. It was a structured hierarchy, with Kauser at the top. She organized the movements, gave the instructions, and ensured that those beneath her followed through on the plans. In short, for the family members, it meant loyalty to their mother came at the cost of their own freedom and futures. Whereas for Kauser, it meant the ability to extend her reach, blending the appearance of ordinary family life with the cold calculation of an international trafficker. The true sophistication of the conspiracy lay in the way the gang engineered their airport routine to appear ordinary. On the surface, their movements mimicked those of casual travelers making short breaks to nearby European destinations. But beneath that appearance, the family's travel plans were carefully timed to intercept one specific stream of luggage. Flights arriving directly from Cancun, Mexico, carrying suitcases already packed with high-purity cocaine. The process began with fake short trips. Members of the group would book tickets to Dublin or Amsterdam, two popular short-haul destinations. They would travel lightly, often with no checked luggage at all. These journeys gave the impression of brief, legitimate getaways. Crucially, their return flights were deliberately timed to land at Birmingham Airport, just as a long-haul flight from Cancun was arriving. Inside the baggage hall, this timing became the cornerstone of the plan. As passengers from both flights mixed at the carousel area, Causa's couriers would move toward the belt serving the Mexico flight. Preloaded suitcases, packed with kilos of cocaine, had been checked in at Cancun by a corrupt insider. The conspirators would simply lift the unaccompanied bags off the carousel and roll them out of the arrivals hall, as though they were retrieving their own belongings from their short-haul flight. The brilliance of the method lay in its simplicity. To an untrained eye, nothing appeared suspicious. Some reports suggest that international drug trafficking networks had used the same tactic before. It became a repeatable system, tested across at least 5 smuggling runs between August and November 2024, employing Farzana Causa's family with similar precision. There was no need for concealed compartments or false-bottomed cases. Instead, the risk was shifted entirely to the moment of interception. Avoiding customs scrutiny was central to the strategy. By behaving like any other returning passenger, dressed casually and avoiding nervous gestures, the couriers counted on slipping through unnoticed. The family's ability to maintain composure was key, since the entire plan rested on appearing normal. On the day of November 11th, officers from the National Crime Agency, NCA, and airport security teams had been quietly monitoring a group of individuals whose movements matched a pattern uncovered over several weeks of investigation. They had identified the suspect's travel pattern, and this time, the group's every step was under close surveillance. As the long-haul flight from Cancun, Mexico arrived, members of Farzana Causa's group blended in with crowds at the baggage claim. CCTV later revealed how calmly they positioned themselves near the Mexico carousel, waiting for bags that should not have belonged to them. In total, 6 suitcases loaded with high-purity cocaine had been planted on the flight by their overseas contact. The group's task was straightforward: lift the cases, wheel them out, and merge back into the flow of passengers. But this time, their every move was tracked. Investigators have clear images of each individual while operating their usual procedure. For investigators, the moment of collection was the final piece of proof needed to confirm the conspiracy in action. CCTV footage also captured the group wheeling the heavy suitcases through the terminal doors and out onto the forecourt, blending with other passengers heading toward pickup vehicles. As they pushed trolleys and dragged bags across the pavement, their plan appeared to be working until officers closed in. In the airport car park, just as the group began loading the luggage into waiting cars, National Crime Agency teams moved in. Within moments, 6 suspects were surrounded and arrested, and all 6 suitcases were seized before they could leave the airport grounds. Inside, investigators found an astonishing 180 kilograms of cocaine, compressed into blocks and tightly wrapped for distribution. The value of the haul was staggering. Experts calculated its wholesale worth at around £5 million, with a potential street value of £14.4 million once broken down into smaller deals. For the NCA, the bust represented not just the disruption of a single smuggling run, but the dismantling of an entire family-led trafficking pipeline. Photographs released later by the CPS showed seized packages stacked together, a stark visual of what the family had risked everything to transport. Now, before we move on to the sentences handed down in court for the Causa family, let's pause to uncover another shocking case. One that began with a single mistake at Birmingham Airport. In February 2016, security staff at Birmingham Airport were carrying out what seemed like a routine inspection at the departure gates. Among the passengers preparing to board a flight to Pakistan was Majid Hussain, a man who presented himself like any other traveler. But in his hand luggage, officers found something that changed the course of his life: a wrap of heroin. The discovery was so surprising because of its simplicity. Investigators later noted that Hussain had not hidden the drug inside a false compartment, nor had he tried to disguise it in elaborate packaging. Instead, the heroin was placed inside his carry-on bag. That small oversight instantly exposed him to further scrutiny. Airport staff raised the alarm, and Hussein was detained on the spot. What began as a minor-looking find quickly spiraled into something much larger. His behavior and the presence of heroin in his bag triggered suspicions that he was not a casual user, but someone with ties to a broader criminal network. Within hours, the airport incident had escalated into a full-scale investigation. The idea that such a seasoned dealer could be undone by something so basic fascinated investigators. They considered whether Hussein's confidence had turned into carelessness, assuming that he would breeze through checks, or whether he had genuinely been sloppy in preparing for the journey. Either way, the result was the same. The wrap of heroin in his carry-on served as the thread that began to unravel the rest of his hidden world. This airport blunder was not just about a misplaced packet of drugs. It was the key that unlocked a much larger story, leading authorities directly to Hussein's home and exposing a stockpile of drugs, weapons and cash far beyond what anyone could have expected from a single passenger at a security check. Once Hussein was detained at Birmingham Airport, officers quickly secured warrants to search his home address on Nansen Road, Saltley. What began as an arrest for a single wrap of heroin soon escalated into the exposure of a far larger and more dangerous operation. The raid revealed that Hussein was not a low-level courier making a reckless mistake. He was a prominent figure in Birmingham's drug trade, with access to both serious quantities of narcotics and firearms. During the search, officers went directly to Hussein's bedroom, where they made their most disturbing discoveries. Hidden under his bed was a suitcase containing 1 kilo of heroin and 4 kilos of cocaine, estimated to have a street value of around £250,000. This confirmed suspicions that the airport wrap was just a fraction of his supply and that Hussein had been involved in regular distribution, but drugs were only part of the picture. Inside the same property, police located an arsenal of weapons that underscored just how dangerous Hussein was. Among the finds was a semi-automatic handgun, fully capable of lethal use, alongside 27 rounds of live ammunition. Officers also uncovered a stun gun cleverly disguised as a mobile phone, a piece of equipment designed to incapacitate without drawing immediate attention. An air pistol was also seized, adding to the collection of weapons that highlighted Hussein's readiness to enforce or protect his criminal activities through violence if necessary. Perhaps most telling of all was the discovery of £300,000 in cash stashed away in the house. Bundled notes pointed to extensive illegal earnings and a thriving drug enterprise that had been operating well before his arrest at the airport. For investigators, the money symbolized the profits Hussein had been reaping, while his community bore the consequences of addiction and violence. The raid left no doubt. Majid Hussein was not an unlucky passenger caught with a misplaced wrap, but a well-armed and well-financed dealer. The combination of drugs, firearms, and vast cash reserves painted a picture of a man at the center of a dangerous and toxic network. When the case against Majid Hussein came before Birmingham Crown Court in August 2016, the scale of his criminality was laid out in full. Prosecutors guided the jury through all the evidence investigators had collected, evidence we have already covered earlier, which convinced the court that Hussein was not simply a careless passenger, but a dangerous and high-level dealer. Hussein chose to plead guilty on the opening day of his trial. The charges included possession of a prohibited firearm, possession of a disguised firearm, possession of ammunition, possession of Class A drugs with intent to supply, and possession of criminal property. By admitting the offences, he avoided a contested trial, but the evidence was already overwhelming. During sentencing, Judge Patrick Thomas QC delivered a sharp assessment. He described the mixture of guns and drugs as a toxic combination, highlighting how dangerous such a pairing was for the wider public. The court imposed a sentence of 12 years in prison. Even after Majid Hussein's conviction, the case did not end at the courtroom doors. Investigators from West Midlands Police continued to pursue him through a Proceeds of Crime Act, (POCA) hearing, determined to claw back the money he had made through his illegal empire. For them, seizing the profits was just as important as securing the conviction. In December 2017, Birmingham Crown Court concluded that he had illegally benefited by hundreds of thousands of pounds. He was formally ordered to repay £295,000 within 3 months. The ruling was stark: either surrender the money or face an additional 3 years in prison on top of his 12-year sentence. Investigators also noted that a further £33,000 of criminal benefit would remain outstanding, to be recovered once additional assets were identified. While Majid Hussein's empire collapsed through carelessness, another smuggler would soon attempt a far bolder move. In November 2021, the routine rhythm of Birmingham Airport was once again disrupted when officers stopped a passenger whose calm composure masked a fortune in narcotics. The man was Mohammed Uzair Rashid, a 35-year-old from Oldham in Greater Manchester, who had just arrived on a flight from Sialkot in Pakistan via Dubai. On the surface, he looked like an ordinary traveller returning from a trip abroad, yet hidden in his luggage was a consignment that investigators would later describe as both staggering in size and alarming in purity. Border Force officers directed Rashid to a secondary search area. The inspection revealed that his checked-in baggage contained nearly 18 kilograms of heroin, packed in multiple tightly wrapped packages. Forensic analysis confirmed that the drugs were of exceptionally high purity, between 66% and 71%. In street terms, this single haul carried an estimated value of more than £900,000. What stood out most in this initial encounter was Rashid's demeanour. CCTV footage, released by the National Crime Agency, later showed him moving through the terminal calmly, without hesitation, pushing his bags as though nothing was amiss. From the outset, Rashid attempted to distance himself from the evidence. Confronted with the heroin found in his luggage, his first defense was denial. He claimed that the bags did not belong to him. When that explanation failed to align with boarding records and travel documents, he shifted his story, insisting that the packages must have been planted inside his luggage without his knowledge. The truth of Rashid's role became clearer when officers examined his mobile phone. Hidden among ordinary contacts and apps were WhatsApp messages exchanged during his journey. The messages were with a contact he referred to simply as brother, a handler based in Pakistan, who appeared to be monitoring Rashid's movements and offering him guidance as he passed through each stage of the trip. One particular message stood out. As Rashid approached airport security, nervous about whether he would be stopped, brother reassured him with the words, "Remain tension-free. God will be generous." The phrasing was meant to calm him, to encourage him to walk naturally through the checks. But in hindsight, it served as chilling evidence of how Rashid had been managed in real time, almost like a puppet directed from afar. For the National Crime Agency, the phone evidence was crucial. It revealed not only Rashid's complicity, but also the wider structure of a professional supply chain. This was not the act of a lone man smuggling drugs for personal gain. It was part of a carefully organized network that recruited couriers, financed flights, and coordinated movements across international borders. Rashid was just one link in that chain, but his arrest exposed vulnerabilities that the NCA would continue to exploit. By May 2022, Rashid appeared at Birmingham Crown Court to face judgment. He entered a guilty plea to importation of Class A drugs, an acknowledgement that he had knowingly attempted to bring the heroin into the UK. The plea spared him a trial, but the sentence reflected the seriousness of the crime: 9 years in prison. The case of Mohammed Uzair Rashid underscored a recurring theme already evident in other Birmingham Airport busts. His story joined the long list of examples used by the NCA to remind others that the lure of fast cash is always outweighed by the certainty of eventual capture and punishment. Now let's return to the first case, where we left the Bradford family caught at Birmingham Airport, and uncover what happened when they finally faced sentencing in court. When the Kauser family and their associate finally stood before Birmingham Crown Court in late 2024, the scale of their crimes was matched only by the severity of the sentences imposed. At the center was Farzana Kauser, identified as the ringleader and was sentenced to 13 years and 4 months in prison. Her children each received significant custodial terms. Junaid Shafak, 33, was sentenced to 10 years and 9 months, while Mohammed Amir Shafak, 28, received 8 years and 9 months. Uzair Mohammed, 22, was handed 8 years and 1 month, and the youngest, Hamza Shafak, who was just 17 at the time of the smuggling runs, was dealt with separately due to his age. By the time of the trial, he had turned 18, and according to the Crown Prosecution Service, his sentencing was scheduled for October 2025, meaning the court had not yet delivered a final decision at the time of reporting. Safar Noor, 19 at the time, was jailed for 7 years and 2 months for her role in the conspiracy. The family's daughter-in-law Sarah Hussain, 27, was given a 2-year sentence, suspended for 2 years. The lone non-family member, Khalid Abdul Qawi, 36, was sentenced to 10 years and 9 months in prison. What do you think about these cases and the sentences each individual received? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next case on UK crime documentaries.